Jet sponsors coverage of the Silverstone Classic.
Welcome to the Silverstone Classic 2016, the greatest classic racing festival in the world. Now, there's really every kind of car you can imagine here, with racing from every era you can think of. And that's just scratching the surface, as there's something happening everywhere you look. Coming up, we have lots of dramatic action as these wonderful old cars do battle around this legendary track. We'll be getting out and about exploring this incredible show, and whilst we're at it, chatting to some of the stars as we go. This year at the Silverstone Classic, there's a special Can-Am race to mark the 50th anniversary of the start of the competition. Now, this hugely popular series ran in the late 60s and 70s, and as the name implies, raced in Canada and North America. There were very few rules, which meant large engines, unrestricted aerodynamics, that all led to the creation of these outrageously fast machines. It attracted big names, big teams, all chasing big prizes, and for a short period dominated the North American scene.
In Europe there was the World Sportscar Championship, and of course there was Formula One. In the United States it was 3, NASCAR, Indianapolis 500, and Can-Am. What was Can-Am? Can-Am was an amazing program because the regulations were all you needed to do was have 2 seats and the wheels had to be covered. So it was an unlimited formula. Now you can imagine what happened in 1966. They started off with 5-litre engines, and by the time I won the championship in '74, I ended up with a 9-litre engine. A completely unlimited formula.
That's a 1973 McLaren M8F Can-Am car. That's 8.8 litre. So to put that in perspective, that's a family-sized engine in each cylinder. It's pretty noisy, and it's just the whole vibration, the frequency of it all, you can feel it. It's just incredible to sit in, really. I'd imagine like sitting on an Apollo rocket, probably.
By 1973, the cars, like this Porsche 917, had engines producing almost 1,400 horsepower and were reaching speeds of 400 kilometers an hour. But costs were spiralling out of control. However, for a while, its candle burnt very brightly indeed and left an awesome legacy.
Rolling thunder at the start of the Can-Am race. The orange colours of the McLaren M8F of Andrew Newell taking the lead from Rob Hall in the Matcha, the blue car with a high white airbox. John Grant's M8 being jumped there by Michele Liguri in the little Lola T292, in amongst the 5-litre and 8-litre big bangers that make the ground shudder. The Lola using its nimble handling here around the tight infield at Silverstone. On board with John Grant. Oh, huge moment for Liguri. He lights up the tyres off the slow corner. 2-litre PDG engine reaching maximum revs there. John Grant using the torque to go by him in the McLaren. There's the Matcha in front. It's going to be a bit of a David versus Goliath battle, but David needs not to spin up the rear wheels. Watch Michele Liguri, and look at the big black stripes. Even that 2-litre Cosworth engine car leads. So the race leader then is Andrew Newell, the orange M8F, so reminiscent of the Bruce and Denny show, as Can-Am became called in the late 60s, when McLaren dominated with Bruce McLaren and Denny Hulme, drivers like Jackie Stewart, John Surtees and many others racing there as well. And the Matcha, of course, so famous for winning Le Mans. Henri Pescarolo, one of the race winners. Graham Hill also won Le Mans with Matcha. with their howling V12 engines that they also used in Formula One in the back of the car. So it's elegant European multi-cylinders versus the big brutal punch of the huge capacity American V8. McLaren's power, the torque of the car allowed it to pull enormous wings through the air in a way that the Le Mans racer never could. Great view from on board with Rob Hall, the restorer and racer. He drives as fine a racing car as he rebuilds down through into the Beckett's S's, and this is where he's really going to catch the McLaren, whose thundering power will just fire it out of the corners and down the hangar straight. All Andy Newell can do to hang on to this at the moment. Such a complete contrast between the huge cubic capacity of the McLaren M8 and the multi-cylinder whale of the Matcha. Fantastic opportunity for the crowds here at Silverstone to see so many different sights and sounds in this Can-Am and Inter-Series race. Inter-Series, predominantly based in Germany and the other Central European tracks, was a home for ex-Formula One cars. Fit a bit of all-encompassing bodywork, and away you go. Just listen to that Matcha. Following through past the GT40, making them look so pedestrian as the big M8F opens the door. Just look, the torque unbelievable in the McLaren, despite the huge wings it's carrying, the mammoth slicks that wouldn't be out of place on a track racer. You still have to baby the throttle in the slow corners. Watch the way it dives as well, the front end absolutely scraping the tarmac, under braking. Sliding around through the complex where the aerodynamic grip is minimal. And those huge injector stacks gulping in litres of air and oxygen with every stroke of its enormous engine. Fantastic onboard view with Rob Hall as he chases once more into Copse Corner. Battle for 8th place. In the middle is the toy of Mark Davis with the 3-litre engine. Out front though, Frank Bradley, car number 31, 1970 March 717, 8.8 litres and a huge shovel wing across the nose. And then the closed Lola T70 Coupe, that's running a 5-litre Chevy. Mike Donovan giving chase to the little lightweight toy, designed by John Tejero. Leaders at it, hammer and tong, still Andy Newell just with a slight advantage in car number 8, the orange McLaren M8F. But Rob Hall all over him in the Matcha. And is the McLaren starting to eat its tyres? All that torque, all that horsepower. Oh, we drift out a little wide into the complex. Rob Hall is right there. Now he's going to try and cut back to the inside. And here the Matcha's ability should be with the chassis rather than the engine. He sneaks in front for the first time as they come down the Wellington Straight. But of course, this is where the McLaren picks up its skirts and runs. Down the inside comes Andy Newell. Can he hold it all together? Oh, Rob Hall's on the outside, the tiniest of touches. That could have been disaster, but both men giving the other plenty, just about enough racing room, let's say. Tiny touch, but disaster averted, and now I think it's going to be tough for the McLaren to retake the lead. The Matcha will be able to stay in front in the twisty stuff as long as Andy Newell can't get back by him on the straights. Well, there goes Rob Hall, look at that, out of Copse Corner and heading towards Maggots and the Beckett's S's. He'll be too far in front on the hangar straight, surely, for the McLaren to take the lead away down to Stowe. And you can hear how Andy Newell is just so sensitive with the throttle, and still the car's trying to spin on the power. We'll take a look again from the outside. Rob Hall sneaks alongside the McLaren. Oh, and squeezes through onto the Wellington Straight. And then down into the braking area of Brooklands. Side by side once more, Andy Newell with the inside line, but just the tiniest of touches as the Matcha goes through. Checkered flag awaits. It will be victory over the McLaren for the Matcha. He takes the win with a 3-litre engine, 8.8 litres of McLaren in second place. Here's the battle for 8th place. Last lap, the big march of Frank Bradley. Is it running out of tyres? No, the toy right behind. And Mike Donovan still there in 10th. Breathless stuff all the way to the checkered flag. And Rob Hall's matcher coming out victorious. John Grant took 3rd in the McLaren M8 CD, Andy Newell 2nd in the M8F, but it was the matcher of Rob Hall that won the race.
Running alongside this event is the classic car auction, which contains some stunning examples for all tastes and budgets. Whether you're interested in something like this lovely old Morris Minor, or if you're into something a little more exotic, then maybe this Ferrari Testarossa might get your attention. There are also some very interesting examples of racing machinery that are well worth taking a look at. In the year 2000, Ford dominated the British Touring Car Championships, coming 1st, 2nd and 3rd in the points. Now, this car was engineered down the road from here at Banbury by legendary race experts ProDrive. Now, it's reckoned that these cars cost around about £1 million to build and prepare. So when the hammer came down at £85,000, it makes you realise that you're getting an awful lot of car and history for your money. The star of the show has to be this, the 1981 Porsche 924 Carrera GTR. Now, this factory-built model was actually built to race at Le Mans. However, this one was shipped to Japan. Now, it's only done a few laps around Fuji and Suzuka racetracks. In fact, according to records, it's only done about 80 miles in its life, meaning it's arrived here in 2016 in something of a time warp. So how do you put a price on preservation like that? Well, it sold for an impressive £505,000, and you'll see there's a sign that says "Do not touch." Yeah, why do you think I'm over here?
Jet sponsors coverage of the Silverstone Classic.
This weekend, there's also a parade of World GP bike legends, which means an impressive display of World Championship winning bikes and an even more impressive display of riders, world champions, who are currently meeting the fans.
We're here with a lot of other world champions and Grand Prix winners on these incredible iconic classic bikes of 500cc two-strokes, which are quite awesome actually to ride. They keep on doing wheelies, you know, if you're not careful.
One thing about us riders, we love riding motorcycles and we love getting together and telling stories, which is what it's all about. But the problem is, we put the visor down, the red mist rises, and we go out for a bit of fun and tongue-in-cheek fun, and it usually gets a bit serious. So it's always fun, but we don't push too hard and be silly, and we just try to entertain the crowd and have a good time ourselves, and hopefully that'll come across to the spectators and to the TV.
The action never stops at the Silverstone Classic, so let's have a quick look at some of the other races. From huge 54-car grids in the Formula Junior races, Sam Wilson was in dominant form in his Lotus, claiming both wins in the Commander York Trophy. A close fight at the front of the Stirling Moss Trophy for Pre-61 sports cars saw Sam Hancock fight his way through in the Ferrari 246S to claim victory. Colin Noble took victory in race 1 of the Super Touring Car Trophy, but race 2 finished in true BTCC style as Noble and James Dodd came to blows on the final lap. Noble was later excluded. Victory was handed to Dodd. In the much-coveted RAC Tourist Trophy for Historic Cars, victory went to the pole-sitting Aston Martin DB4 GT of Wolfgang Friedrichs and Simon Hatfield, but it was a tough fight all the way. Cooper Jaguars battled for the lead of the RAC Woodcote Trophy right from the start. Frederick Wakeman and Patrick Blakeney-Edwards each got in front twice, but Chris Ward kept fighting back. With 5 minutes to go, he sneaked through to hold on to the flag and victory.
Next up, it's the ever-popular under 2-litre touring cars. These often tail-happy machines are always great fun to watch as they slide their way around the track. It's always competitive and attracts a quality field of cars and drivers.
Pole sitter Andy Wolf leads a field of 40 cars in the under 2-litre touring cars, most of which it appear are the Lotus Cortinas. He stays to the left-hand side of the picture on the inside. Neil Brown, the engine builder, on the outside, the white car with the red stripe over its roof. Just about everybody else seems to have Works Lotus white and green on board with Jackie Oliver scrabbling for grip in the BMW. And just in front is Andrew Banks in the Alfa Giulia Sprint. Oh, lots of understeer, followed by lots of oversteer in the BM. And there'll be no grip here on the inside either. There's the Alfa right in front. Change for second coming up, I think. Neil Brown drifts out wide. David Cuff goes through. Mark Sumter in the pale blue machine. He comes through. Mark Sumter driving on his own, rather greedily. But the Lotus Cortinas running away at the front of the field. Andy Wolf. Second now is David Cuff. Third with the red stripe, Neil Brown. Dives to the inside, into Brooklands, and through he goes. Mark Sumter drifts out wide. Another Lotus Cortina shoots across the bows of Jackie Oliver. Oliver right up behind Mark Sumter, who power slides out of Luffield. And he's right in the way. Meant Oliver has a little bit more grip there, perhaps. There is Jackie Oliver right behind the pale blue car. Lotus Cortinas as far as the eye can see. It's become such a popular racing car these days. Andy Wolf turns in with a big advantage over the battle for second. David Cuff goes through past the white car with the red stripe of Neil Brown. Red and white colours, the colours of Fortec. So Richard Dutton has those on his car, makes it easy to distinguish. And Mark Sumter's car, the pale blue machine, very easy to spot. Look at the way that the cars are being thrown around, dancing, sliding, constantly moving. Fantastic opportunity for drivers to really enjoy sliding a car around in a way you just can't with modern machinery. These cars really respond to it well. A little bit of debris flying up over the screen of David Cuff. Mark Sumter in fourth. The Alfa down to fifth position, Andrew Banks, and right behind him is Jackie Oliver. Everybody peeling out of the slipstream on the hanger straight. Basically the leader's on his own, second to 20th. In one long queue of cars. And Neil Brown, legendary engine builder, also a handy historic racer, as he is showing right here. Third place is the car of David Cuff, the pale blue car of Mark Sumter in fourth position. And if it wasn't for Andy Wolf out front, this would be, what, a 15-car battle for the lead? The yellow windscreen strip, David Tomlin defending against Sean McInerney as they turn into the first corner. McInerney in 64 all over the back of him at the moment. And Neil Brown just starting to try and ease away from David Cuff, the blue car of Mark Sumter. And then the Alfa and the BM, Sumter in very deep there, handful of oversteer. Neil Brown on the left of the picture in second place. Oh, he's on the oil again, drifts out very wide, just hangs on to that. Jackie Oliver dropped away a little, now down the inside, 64, Sean McInerney trying to pile the pressure on David Tomlin. Back with the BMW, Jackie Oliver, nobody in his mirrors at the moment, so he's concentrating on Andrew Banks. As still the battle for second place rages on. This time Neil Brown with the inside defensive line, making David Cuff go the long way round into Copse Corner. And that is not going to work. So he's going to have to keep piling the pressure on Neil Brown. Big slide as he gets onto the AstroTurf on the exit of the curbs at Copse. Over to the right for Maggots, turning into the left. and hard on the brakes, trying to get these things stopped in a straight line. You can drive them sideways on the power, but not on the brakes. Into the Beckett's S's, and Neil Brown looking more and more sideways. He's offline, trying to keep the power on. Big slide going. To a tidier line from David Cuff. He's going to have momentum onto the hanger straight. Here we go. Neil Brown is right in his sights. He pulls out early, maybe too early. Mark Sumter in the blue car trying to catch as well. Jackie Oliver's BMW has been dropped, so this is a three-way battle for second. The Alfa with a good grandstand seat. Neil Brown on the inside, still hanging on, still sliding out wide there. These cars always soft at the rear, firm at the front. Looks as though Neil Brown's might be maybe oversteering a little too much roll at the back, and you saw David Cuff picking up the front wheel there as they popped out of the veil. Shows how stiff they are at the front. Big moment for Crispian Nistorica in the Alfa Giulia. Contact there and broken steering, and that is him out of the race, I'm afraid. Andy Wolff in the pits to hand over to teammate Richard Meaden. They have a big lead midway through this 50-minute race.
Jet sponsors coverage of the Silverstone Classic.
Pit stops all done now, and the battle for second still between the red and white Cortina and the number 7 machine. No longer David Cuff, Steve Soper, the touring car and Le Mans racing ace, all over the back of Fortec team boss Richard Dutton, wheel to wheel as they head down into the Beckett's S's. And Dutton throwing the car around with some aplomb. Soper, though, a little neater and tidy. Look how much work goes into the steering here, though. Get that front end to bite and then drive it through on the throttle. Race leader is Richard Meaden, inherited a handy advantage from Andy Wolff. He's now a long way in front, little way from Richard Dutton. I think perhaps to say thank you to Steve Soper for giving him racing room a little earlier on. At the end of the hanger straight, into Stowe they come, nose to tail. And the car still very sideways. Richard Dutton hanging on in the same way that Neil Brown was. Just hear the car working, four-wheel drifting, tail wagging as the car sits there revving its Lotus twin cam engine. No flappy paddle gearboxes here, no sequential shifters. This is proper H pattern. If it was good enough for Jim Clark, it's good enough for these boys. Minis in their own battle here in the dry. The white car is Jonathan Lewis, number 24. In the colours of Team Hesketh with the bear on the front, of course. James Hunt's colours in his early years in Formula One. He's right in front of Graham Churchill. On board, in traffic with Steve Soper, Richard Dutton right in front. Still the battle for second place. They negotiate Andrew Beaumont's car as they put him a lap down. Big lock up from Dutton, big slide, drift out wide, and through goes Soper. Dutton just a little offline, under pressure, and that red and white car has looked very tail happy all the way through. The more it slides, the more it overheats its tyres, the more that makes it slide. A real handful for Richard Dutton. Here comes Jonathan Lewis, picking up the rear wheel of the Mini as the Cortina of John Spires slides around in front of him. Looking to climb all over him and move further up the top 15, where the conditions even the playing field for the Minis last year. Not so here, but Lewis squeezes down the inside, gets the power down, and he'll go through onto the Wellington Straight. Let's look again at the change for second. Richard Dutton with the red stripe, too deep into Brooklands, couldn't get the speed scrubbed off enough. Steve Soper pounced. Old trouble for Soper, and that looks like the end of that second place that he had worked so hard for. Checker flag is almost in sight for our dominant race winners. Andy Wolff started from pole and ran away, and Dickie Meaden has just added to their advantage. A comprehensive victory and a fabulous slide out of the last corner to celebrate the win. Maxim and Andrew Banks claiming third place in the Alfa Giulia. In second, Richard Dutton and Neil Brown, but our winners, Andy Wolff and Dickie Meaden.
Here, enjoying all the action this weekend, is Ross Brawn, the man behind a large part of Michael Schumacher's success and who also steered our very own Jenson Button to the F1 world title.
My first year in motorsport was 76, which of course was a wonderful year, the great year, the battle between Hunt and Lauda, and there's been a movie made about it now, and so that was my first year. But I was a machinist for Frank Williams at that time, so I wasn't on the front line. But as over the next few years, I started going to the circuit. I was a mechanic, and so I know many of the cars here quite intimately, and particularly the Williams, because racing is a FW8 and FW7, and they're two cars which I worked on, and two cars which I was part of the team that won the World Championships with. So first with Alan Jones, then with Keke Rosberg, so great cars.
I believe the first victory at Silverstone, you were off celebrating and you missed a key event in your family life.
No, the other way around. It was on a Saturday. I was here on the Thursday and Friday for practice. And my wife, who was here today, went into labour on Friday night. So I had to ring Frank and say, look, Frank, it's a tough call, but I'm going to have to go to hospital with my wife. If it all happens early enough, I'll be along, but don't rely on it. And it didn't, and Helen, our eldest daughter, was quite a long labour. And by the time she was born, I called home and told Jean's mum, you're a grandmother, and she said, well, you've just won your first race. And that was Alan Jones at Silverstone on a Saturday. So I came home and went to the pub that all the Williams guys used to use, and they all came back from the race, and we had a great night.
The Silverstone Classic is so vast, with so much to see and do, that I thought there's just one thing for it. Go out on a little tour in this and try and see some of it. Now here at the Village Green is the perfect place to chill out, maybe grab a bite to eat and drink, do some shopping over there, or if it takes your fancy, you could always have a round of crazy golf. Out here on the infield, there are classic cars as far as the eye can see. In fact, there are over 10,000 cars from over 100 car clubs. And they really have got something for everyone. We've got Cobras here, Lotus, Porsche, you name it, they're going to have it. And it's not just on the ground. If you look up, you never know what might be flying over. Down here at Bridge Corner, it's the street car shootout. Loads of smoky burnouts and some monster engines. Okay, let's do it.
We are win.
At the end of the day, you can come down here to the main stage where you can grab a beer and have a boogie to all the bands entertaining the crowds.
Saturday night, as the Group C cars raced into the sunset at Silverstone, on stage it was Reef who were rocking the crowd.
Be facing the sun like that and watch it go down, and the crowd would call. We've been looked after so well here. As well, since we got here, we've been looked after brilliantly. So, hats off Silverstone. Yeah, it's a cool event.
If I could give you a blank checkbook, where would you put your money on if you could buy one car? What would you buy?
I would like. I'm not a big car guy, so I'm not going to pretend to be. But what I would like is a gentleman's club on wheels.
Then, with the hot air balloons firing, it was time for the Stranglers to put on a show and keep everyone rocking into the night.
Jet sponsors coverage of the Silverstone Classic.
Silverstone Classic is like the culmination of everything that's great about the classic car industry. It's full of mechanics, iconic racing cars, total access as well. I mean, you can be a member of the public, walk into any one of those pits and literally touch a £20 million Ferrari.
And it's all like spread out, there's stuff going on everywhere, like you say, and to get the chance to walk around and see most of it, I'm probably not going to get to even half of it today, but now, like I say, I've got a lot more time from than I ever did before, so it's all good, really.
Of course, this is one of the iconic classic car events. And what I like about this one, it's very much a competitive event. It gives a lot of people a great chance to drive on a wonderful circuit, and great for the spectators, but it's also great for the competitors.
And it's a place where people can come not only have a passion for motorsport, but have a passion for classic cars. There's a little bit for everyone. See, some people like to watch them racing, and some people like to just stare at the cars and see them being restored, and it's all here under one giant roof, if you like.
Will Nuttall won the first race for the pre-1966 Grand Prix cars, and Peter Horseman took the second. But it was Richard Tarling who won the hearts of the crowd. On the final lap, his car came to an agonising halt just before the line. So, in time-honoured style, he jumped out and pushed it past the checkered flag for a heroic 19th place. Andy Willis and restorer Rob Hall claimed a lights-to-flag victory in the FIA Historic Sports Cars in the wonderful Whaling Matra MS 650. As evening drew in, there was another great battle for the lead in the International Trophy. Two Cobras battling side by side before Simon Hadfield managed to ease ahead of Ollie Bryant and on to victory. Saturday evening saw the mighty Group C cars on track. Nathan Kinch putting in a dominant drive to take the win with the Lola T92. In race 2, Bob Berridge struck back in his Nissan R93 CK to claim the win. A popular new addition was the historic Touring Car Challenge with some familiar favourites from the 70s and the 80s. The winners, BMW M3 driving father and son duo Nick and Harry Whale. After a great battle at the front of the pre-66 big-engine touring cars, Craig Davies in the red Mustang pulled clear to take the win. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the late James Hunt winning the Formula One world title. To celebrate that now legendary season when he battled Niki Lauda for the 76 crown, there was a wonderful display of some of James's racing cars, conjuring memories of this colourful character.
The season was an amazing thing. It was just so, every race there was some kind of drama, and the daily newspapers got involved, and it was the hottest summer for many, many years. It was, the summer of '76 was red hot, and in more ways than one. And every Grand Prix there was some kind of major incident. Didn't matter if it was James's wife ran off with Richard Burton. That caused huge furore in the papers. We got the car was too wide in the Spanish Grand Prix, so we got disqualified. Then we got reinstated. Niki crashed at the Nürburgring, and after a few races came back again at Monza. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it because I was in total charge, and I made all the major decisions all the time. And in the end, it worked out.
Well, I was lucky to meet him a few times. My father was involved in motor racing, and James used to be sponsored by Garings, which was a Ford agency in Reading where we lived. So James used to come along and do a bit of promotional work at Garings in Reading, and my dad knew him, and we'd go along and say hello. And I remember once, rather embarrassingly, putting his helmet on at one of these events, and my dad giving me a bollocking, telling me to get it off. So he was a pretty serious racer underneath it all. He liked to have a good time, but he was a very serious racer, and you know, of the sort that can't exist anymore, quite honestly, with the pressures and commercialization of Formula One. I don't think a James Hunt type character can really exist anymore.
40 years ago, I wasn't even thought about. Mum hadn't even met Dad in 1976. No, I mean, I was so small when he died. It's, you know, only 5 years old. I don't even remember one conversation about motorsport. all of my knowledge of my father has been from from stories from friends and family and the media. This lady said she was at Sunningdale Golf Course and their car had broken down, and Dad came out and they said, "Oh, he should know what's going on." And Dad opened the bar and said, "I haven't got a clue, but I'll buy you a cup of tea until the AA arrive."
Always a firm favourite here at Silverstone are the historic F1 races, and it's easy to see why when you have an incredible array of machinery from the 70s and 80s doing battle, many of which you would never have seen go head-to-head in their day, making it a sight to behold.
Away we go, one of the highlights of every Silverstone Classic, the Masters Formula One race. They spread out 4 wide. Nick Padmore, the pole sitter in the Williams, but look at the yellow Fittipaldi F5 of Ollie Hancock, one of the older cars in the race, searing through into the lead. Wheel-to-wheel action, 29 cars on the grid, 28 of them with 3-litre Cosworth V8s. But a fantastic sight and sound. And the battle for the lead is back on. Nick Padmore in the Williams comes nicely onto the Wellington straight, all over the back of Ollie Hancock. On board, rushing down into Brooklands. Down the inside he comes. Can he get it stopped? Can he turn in neat and tidy? Yes, he does. Martin Stretton, 3rd place in the green Tyrrell 012. And in fact, Loic de Man is 4th in another Tyrrell, the Candy Tyrrell, the 010 car, ahead of the first of the Lotuses. That's Greg Thornton's black and gold car that started 2nd on the grid. On board now with Mike Wrigley in his 07D Williams. Christoph Danzenberg drifts out wide in front. Fabulous sounds. Take a look again at the change for the lead. Swapping to the inside, Nick Padmore under braking, 2 wheels on the curb. Classic move at Brooklands. 7th place still with the Williams. Right in front is Steve Hartley in the Arrows. And in front of him, Christoph Danzenberg, another Williams. And this is a long queue now in the battle for 4th place. There is Ollie Hancock, started 4th, took the lead early on, now back down to 4th. Martin Stretton in the green and black Benetton Tyrrell right behind him. And that means the Candy Tyrrell and the Lotus have both gone by into the top 3. And of course the Copasuca Fittipaldi team started by Wilson Fittipaldi, Emerson's brother. That car dates from 1977, one of the older cars in the field, but still with a 3-litre Cosworth engine. Introduced in 1968, and it was still winning races in the late 80s. Here comes Christoph Danzenberg looking down the inside of Ollie Hancock. Martin Stretton goes around the outside, and no way through there. But the ground effect on the Williams, look at the skirts on the bottom of these side pods all the way down to the ground. That gives it so much more grip in the medium and high-speed corners than the older Fittipaldi pre-ground effect on that car. Aerodynamics were still really in their infancy in the 70s. Brazilian designer Ricardo de Villa designed this car along with just about every other car that the Fittipaldis drove in their native Brazil, starting with a VW Beetle with a V8 engine as their very first racing car. Through the phenomenal Beckett's S's, the ground effect really starting to work now for these cars, sucking the car down onto the ground. Good run off the corner from Mike Wrigley as we come out to the Chapel curve down the Hangar straight, and just in front Christoph Danzenberg trying to line up a move. See Ollie Hancock looking in the mirrors, he's trying to defend the inside, but Danzenberg has got the line. Ollie Hancock though with the racing line, more grip, he stays in front still. Great battle here, 2 very different cars. In fact, we've got 3 makes in these 4 cars. See the Fittipaldi sliding off the corner, the Williams much more planted already as the speed starts to build, and Hancock having to use all his skill. Again, Danzenberg looks to the inside, and again Hancock uses the full width of the road, the racing line, to keep the momentum up, keep his nose in front as he slingshots by. And once he gets into the tight and twisty stuff, it's going to be very hard to pass, but the queue is growing. There is the Arrows of Steve Hartley. We're on board with Mike Wrigley now. He's got Rob Hall behind, and Simon Fish in the MN180 Ensign is closing in on the back of the queue as well. So as Danzenberg gets in front of Hancock, The next one will be lining up. Rob Hall taking a little tilt down the inside of Mike Rigby as they came into Brooklands. And see what a great job Hancock is doing in the slower stuff. A little bit too much understeer there though as he gets into Luffield. Can't get on the power immediately, and Steve Hartley's Arrows, newer car by some 5 or 6 seasons, will be able to power by if he gets a good run down through the Beckett's S's. He's now right in the slipstream of the Fittipaldi. We're on board still with Mike Wrigley. And Wrigley again will be queuing up to have a little go if he can. Steve Hartley looking to the inside line into Maggots, and that's going to queer his speed a little as he goes through the Beckett's S's. Leaders coming down towards us. There's the battle for second. The Arrows up to second place. The Lotus in third position. Fourth, Martin Stretton in the green Tyrrell. Then fifth, Christoph Danzenberg ahead of Ollie Hancock, the yellow car. Steve Hartley and Mike Wrigley with Rob Hall in the Ligier sweeping around the outside at Stowe. And he just gets his nose in front. That was a great move by Rob Hall. Another ground effect car. That Ligier JS17 moving around the outside. Fabulous stuff. Well, you wouldn't think that these cars are worth the tens of hundreds of thousands that they are worth. Ridiculous amounts of money in this machinery, and they are being raced the way that they were intended to by their designers, the way that they did in period. Down the inside comes the Arrows. Another good pass. Ollie Hancock having to just leave enough racing room. Steve Hartley goes by him, and now Rob Hall is on his tail as well. Take a look at the start again from Mike Wrigley. Ollie Hancock, the yellow Fittipaldi on the left, sweeps around the outside, and Loic de Man, the Candy Tyrrell up the inside. That's a great move as Wrigley gets mugged by everyone. Battle for second, Loic de Man in the Candy Tyrrell, and the Lotus of Greg Thornton. And he is reeling him in. Just 2 years separated these cars. The Tyrrell from 1980, the Lotus from 82. Look how much further forward the driver sits than they do nowadays. Battle for 7th place. Ollie Hancock in the yellow Fittipaldi, still holding on from Rob Hall in the Ligier. Hall going the long way round the outside. Has he got the grip? Goodness me, he has just about, and Hancock gives him enough room to survive. And through he goes, up into 7th, and we follow through. The doors open. Mike Wrigley squeezes by for 8th. Ollie Hancock down to 9th position. And the Ensign right behind him might well be about to demote him as well. Simon Fish. Ollie Hancock, though, having a little tilt back down the inside of Mike Wrigley, showing his nose. Didn't get any overlap there, though. Hancock giving everything in that Fittipaldi, but it is just a little outclassed in terms of age and aerodynamics. Wasn't an outright front runner in its day. Oh, Steve Hartley down the inside into Cops Corner. This is for 5th place. Dies by Christoph Danzenberg. That was a good move. Use his speed on the pit straight, or the old pit straight, to go by into Cops Corner. Maggots and into the Beckett's S's. Back marker in front. Oh, and he's got his hand out to the cockpit. He's got a problem. Run-off area just where he needed it, but something went very wrong in the middle of the Beckett's S's. And it may well be either that the car has stripped a gear or dropped a cylinder, but he was in no minds there, wasn't he? Pull off immediately, shut it down. Here is our battle for second place. Loic de Man still just in front of Greg Thornton. Race leader Nick Padmore in the Williams, a long way clear now. And this is the battle for the podium, and a big looping spin for Greg Thornton. Selects another gear and away he goes. But that will have been a real eye-opener for him. Big lose into Abbey. Just carrying a fraction more speed. Let's take a look here. Yeah, just asking a little too much of the car. Here is your race leader, Nick Padmore, in his Williams FW07 at the circuit at which Frank Williams' team won their first ever Grand Prix victory with an FW06 and Alan Jones. The FW07, of course, went on to win the World Championship, and such a successful car, and another race win here at Silverstone. Nick Padmore And behind, there's the last corner dice for 5th position. That's Mike Wrigley back inside Rob Hall in the Ligier. Well, after a time, a couple of cars in front of them, they are back up the order. Christoph Dansenborg will finish 4th. Mike Wrigley in 5th position unless Rob Hall can get off the corner well, and he doesn't. He goes through in 6th. Ollie Hancock will finish 7th in the Fittipaldi, ahead of Mike Cantillon's Tyrrell. Breathless, thrilling Formula One action. Greg Thornton 3rd in the Lotus, 2nd Loic de Man in the Tyrrell, but victory for Nick Padmore in the Williams FW07C.
I'm afraid our time at the Silverstone Classic has come to an end. It's been great to see such incredible machines in action and a real privilege to get up close and personal with them. I hope you've enjoyed it as well, and we'll see you again next year.
Jet sponsors coverage of the Silverstone Classic.